Police say the 33-year-old's vehicle was seen on I-10 that afternoon heading towards Texas on Wednesday, March 9th.
Imagine driving alone at night, your GPS leading you down unfamiliar highways. You're just trying to make extra money to support your kids. The passenger in your back seat seems quiet, maybe a little off, but you push the thought away. You need this fare. But what if that one ride, that one decision to help someone get to Texas, became the last decision you ever made? What if the person you trusted to sit behind you had other plans? This is what happened to Ella Goodie, a 33-year-old mother who vanished after picking up a passenger on March 9th, 2022. And what makes this case even more chilling is that the man accused of taking her life should have been in court that very same day. Before we dive into this case, if you're new here, welcome to One Crime at a Time. We cover real cases with real victims and real families left searching for answers. So if you appreciate deep dives into true crime and want to stay updated on cases like this, hit that like button, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you never miss an upload. Now let's get into Ella's story. Ella Goodie wasn't just another missing person statistic. She was a real woman with a real life, real dreams, and 2 teenage children who depended on her. She lived in Scott, Louisiana, a small community where everyone pretty much knows everyone. Ella worked hard. She was an Uber and Lyft driver, navigating the gig economy like millions of Americans trying to make ends meet. But here's where things get a bit more complicated. To make more money, Ella had started taking clients outside of the official rideshare apps. She'd accept private rides, cash payments, direct requests. It's something a lot of drivers do, especially when bills are piling up and the kids need new shoes or help with school expenses. But it also meant she was operating without the safety net those apps provide, without the tracking, without the accountability, without the digital trail that might have saved her life. On March 9th, 2022, Ella told her 2 teenagers something that probably seemed routine at the time. She was picking up a passenger and driving them to Houston, Texas. It was a long trip, sure, but it would bring in good money. She promised her kids she'd be back the next day. Can you imagine being those kids? Your mom kisses you goodbye, tells you she'll see you tomorrow, and that's the last time you ever see her face. The last time you hear her voice. The last time she walks out that door. They had no idea that March 9th would be the day their entire world shattered. Ella left Louisiana that day, heading west on Interstate 10 toward Texas with her passenger. Traffic cameras captured her black 2012 Audi Q5 making that journey. She was there, behind the wheel, driving into the unknown. And here's what makes this so eerie. 12 hours later, those same traffic cameras picked up her vehicle again, but this time it was heading back into Louisiana. Back toward home. But Ella wasn't the one driving. Someone else was behind that wheel. Someone who had just done something terrible. When March 10th came and went without a word from Ella, her family grew concerned. By March 11th, 2022, 2 days after she'd left, they officially reported her missing. Imagine the dread that must have filled their hearts. Ella wasn't the type to just disappear. She wouldn't abandon her children. Something was horribly wrong, and deep down they knew it. Law enforcement began piecing together her last known movements. They pulled traffic camera footage and saw her Audi heading toward Texas, and then returning. They traced her cell phone records. The last ping from Ella's phone came from near the Iowa exit in Louisiana. Authorities searched that area, combing through fields and backroads, hoping to find her. But there was nothing. No sign of Ella. No body. No answers. Just a chilling silence that stretched on for weeks. Then, on April 4th, 2022, nearly a month after Ella disappeared, the St. Joseph Police Department in Missouri, hundreds of miles away from Louisiana, found her black Audi Q5. The car was abandoned, empty, and Ella was nowhere to be found. But investigators had something now. They had the vehicle, and with it, they could start building a case. They could pull forensics, check for fingerprints, look for blood evidence, anything that might tell them what happened to Ella Goodie. As they dug deeper, one name kept coming up. Brandon Jermaine Francisco, a 36-year-old man from Mansura, Louisiana. And this is where the story takes a dark turn, because Brandon Francisco wasn't just some random passenger. He was a career criminal with a history that stretched back 20 years. He'd been in and out of the system, racking up charges, violent offenses, the kind of record that should have kept him locked up. But somehow he was still out on the streets. And here's the kicker. On March 9th, 2022, the exact same day Ella Goodie disappeared, Brandon Francisco was supposed to be in court. He had a court date for a shooting that happened back on December 24, 2018, near Cheneyville. He was facing attempted murder charges out of Rapides Parish, serious charges that could have put him away for a long time. But Francisco didn't show up to court that day. Instead, he was trying to flee Louisiana, trying to escape those charges. And to do that, he needed a ride. He needed someone who wouldn't ask too many questions, someone just trying to make a little extra money. He needed someone like Ella Goodie. Investigators quickly identified Francisco as a person of interest. He was believed to be the last person to have contact with Ella. The timeline fit. The motive fit. Everything pointed to him. But where was he? Francisco had fled, just like he'd planned. He made it all the way to Missouri, probably thinking he'd gotten away with it. But on March 25, 2022, just over 2 weeks after Ella vanished, U.S. Marshals caught up with him. They arrested him in Missouri and extradited him back to Louisiana. Now, you'd think that would be the end of it, right? He'd be charged with Ella's murder, stand trial, and face justice. But the legal system doesn't always move that fast, especially when there's no body. Without physical evidence, without remains, it's incredibly difficult to prove a murder occurred. So for months, the case seemed to stall. Francisco was back in custody, but he wasn't being charged with Ella's death. Instead, in October 2022, he pleaded guilty to charges related to that 2018 shooting incident and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. 30 years for attempted murder. But still nothing for Ella. Her family was devastated. They knew Francisco was responsible. Law enforcement knew it too. But knowing something and proving it in court are two very different things. By May 2022, the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office had officially escalated Ella's case from a missing person investigation to a homicide investigation. They'd used investigative techniques and gathered witness statements that convinced them Ella was dead and that Francisco had killed her. But they still didn't have her body. They didn't know where he'd left her, how he'd disposed of her, or what exactly had happened during those hours she was driving him to Texas. And then the case seemed to go quiet. Months turned into a year. A year turned into 2. Ella's children were growing up without their mother. Her family was trapped in this agonizing limbo, unable to grieve properly because they didn't have closure. They didn't have answers. They didn't have Ella. But investigators never stopped working the case. Behind the scenes, federal authorities were building something bigger. They were gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, pulling together every piece of the puzzle they could find. And in November 2024, nearly 3 years after Ella disappeared, there was finally a breakthrough. A federal grand jury returned an indictment against Brandon Jermaine Francisco. He was formally charged with carjacking resulting in the death of Ella Goodie. The indictment laid it all out. It alleged that on or about March 9, 2022, Francisco took Ella's 2012 Audi Sport utility vehicle from her by force, violence, and intimidation, and that his actions resulted in her death. It also alleged that Francisco used a 9mm caliber firearm during the crime. This was huge. Federal charges meant a federal case, and carjacking resulting in death carries a mandatory sentence of life in prison. On November 13, 2024, Brandon Jermaine Francisco, now 39 years old, stood in federal court and did something that shocked many people. He pleaded guilty. He admitted to carjacking Ella Goodie. He admitted that he shot her several times. He admitted that he killed her and then disposed of her body before fleeing in her vehicle. After nearly 3 years of silence, of denials, of legal maneuvering, Francisco finally confessed to what everyone already knew. He murdered Ella Goodie. His guilty plea came with a binding agreement. Mandatory life in prison, no chance of parole, no possibility of release. He will die behind bars. His sentencing is currently set for January 27, 2026, where that life sentence will be formally handed down. For Ella's family, it was a moment of bittersweet relief. Finally, there was accountability. Finally, the man who took their daughter, their mother, their loved one, was facing the consequences. But even with Francisco's confession, there's still one enormous, heartbreaking piece missing. Ella's body has never been found. Despite his admission, despite his guilty plea, Francisco has not told authorities where he left her. He shot her multiple times and disposed of her body somewhere between Louisiana and Texas, or maybe on that drive back. Maybe he dumped her in a field, a river, a remote area where no one would ever look. But he's not saying. And that silence is torture for Ella's family. They have questions that demand answers. Why did he target Ella? Was it random? Or did he know she was a driver looking to make money? Where did he take her after he killed her? What did he do with her body? Did she suffer? Did she know what was coming? These are the questions that haunt them every single day. They can't have a proper funeral. They can't lay her to rest. They can't visit her grave and feel that small sense of peace that comes with knowing where your loved one is. Instead, they're left with this gaping wound that refuses to heal. Ella's family has said publicly that they won't stop until they find her. They want closure. They want to bring her home. They want to start the healing process, but they can't do that without knowing where she is. And Francisco, the only person who knows, is choosing to stay silent. Maybe it's a final act of cruelty. Maybe he thinks holding on to that information gives him some kind of power. Maybe he just doesn't care. But whatever his reasons, his refusal to tell them where Ella is makes an already horrific crime even more monstrous. This case shines a harsh light on the dangers that rideshare drivers face every single day. When you work for Uber, Lyft, or any other gig economy platform, you're essentially inviting strangers into your car, into your personal space. And while most passengers are perfectly fine, all it takes is one wrong person to turn a normal workday into a nightmare. Ella was trying to provide for her kids. She was working hard, taking extra rides, doing whatever it took to make ends meet. And a career criminal, a man who should have been locked up years ago, took advantage of that. He used her kindness, her willingness to help, as a weapon against her. And let's talk about the systemic failures here, because they're impossible to ignore. Brandon Francisco had a criminal history that went back 2 decades. He was facing attempted murder charges. He was dangerous. Everyone in the system knew it. Yet on March 9, 2022, he was free. He wasn't in jail. He wasn't in court. He was out on the streets, able to hire a driver, able to get into Ella's car, able to kill her. How does that happen? How does someone with his record, with charges that serious hanging over him, get the opportunity to victimize someone else? Those are questions that the system needs to answer, because Ella Goodie paid the price for those failures with her life. Her 2 teenage children are now growing up without their mother. They'll never get to see her at their graduations, their weddings, the births of their own children. All those moments, all those milestones, Ella won't be there. And they have to live with that loss every single day, knowing that their mom died simply because she picked up the wrong passenger on a random Wednesday in March. So what do we take away from Ella Goodie's story? What does this case teach us about human nature, about the choices we make, about the monsters who walk among us? Think about it. Francisco knew exactly what he was doing. He was running from the law, trying to escape justice for a previous crime, and he was willing to kill an innocent woman to do it. He didn't see Ella as a person, as a mother, as someone with a family who loved her. He saw her as a means to an end, a vehicle, a way out, and when he was done with her, he threw her away like she was nothing. What makes someone capable of that level of cruelty? Is it something they're born with, or does life shape them into monsters? Francisco had 20 years of criminal history. 20 years of choices, of violence, of disregard for other people's lives. At what point does someone cross that line where they stop seeing other humans as human? And more importantly, how do we stop people like him before they get to that point? There's also the question of trust. Ella trusted Francisco, at least enough to let him into her car. She probably chatted with him, asked him about his trip, maybe tried to make small talk to pass the time on that long drive. She was just doing her job. But Francisco betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. It makes you wonder, how do we protect ourselves in a world where people like that exist? How do rideshare drivers, especially those working independently, keep themselves safe when they can't know who they're picking up or what that person is capable of? And finally, there's the cruelty of not knowing. Ella's family has some answers now. They know who killed her. They know he's going to prison for life. But they don't have the one answer that matters most. Where is she? Where did he leave her? Francisco has that information, and he's choosing to withhold it. Why? What does he gain from keeping that secret? Does it give him some sick sense of satisfaction to know that her family is still suffering? Or is he just indifferent to their pain? Either way, it's another layer of evil that's hard to comprehend. If you found this case as gripping and heartbreaking as I did, I need you to do something for me. Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Do you think Francisco should be pressured to reveal where Ella's body is? Should there be laws that incentivize convicted killers to give families closure? What do you think goes through someone's mind when they make the choice to take another person's life, and then just carry on like nothing happened. I really want to hear from you, so drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're not already subscribed to One Crime at a Time, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a case. We're building a community of people who care about these stories, who want to see justice for victims like Ella, and who refuse to let their names be forgotten. Every like, every share, every comment helps these stories reach more people and keeps the pressure on for answers. If you found this case interesting, visit the channel to watch this next. We've covered dozens of cases involving victims who were just going about their daily lives when evil found them. Cases where families are still searching for answers, still fighting for justice. And more similar vital cases like this, stories that need to be told, names that need to be remembered. So stick around, keep watching, and let's continue seeking the truth, one crime at a time.